Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's Tech Therapy session, I'm joined with my partner in crime, Stop the FOMO. But today's session, FOMO, is on Sony's brand new RGB mini LED. Now, we did a video on this as soon as the embargo lifted yesterday, and I thought the findings were very interesting as we had nearly almost 1,000 people, 940 or 60 people watching concurrently, and I was actually pretty surprised by the reception from the community within the video. Now, this is interesting. I don't think we've ever done a reaction video to our own work, but we really did. And while all the other creators are out there doing their videos, I didn't really feel the need to do one myself as we did one together. But seeing the impact in the comments, FOMO, is why I want to do this video today. Quickly, starting the table that way, tell me your first thoughts about our video and the reception to from the audience.
So obviously, I was very excited that Sony gets to flex. And honestly, I didn't even know if Sony could flex, right?
Yeah,
As much as I like the Bravia 10, it didn't move the needle in terms of advanced technology. It had the
you mean the
22-bit, whatever,
you
and
mean the
within
Bravia 9.
the Bravia 9. Look at me. I'm
Bravia
already
9.
talking the Bravia
You're
10.
ready. You're ready going into the future. I can't live in the moment.
Yeah, I know. And this is me speculating that RGB LED will be called the Bravia 10. Nothing
Yeah.
official. I don't think Sony had a name for it because I asked them, what should I call it? Like, I don't know. Call it whatever you want.
Yeah,
So I'm
call
calling the Bravia
you.
10. So anyway, I didn't know if Sony cared about TVs to the degree that we do in terms of advanced technology. I know they care about image processing and the software, but ever since I found out, like many of you, where they stopped making chips themselves for the TVs,
Yep.
where they may have stopped making panels for the TVs and just kind of source other people's panels, although good panels, it's kind of like them layering software on top of this stuff. And for me, it was so exciting to share with you. Wait, guys, they're still making panels, although
Yeah.
it's not the affordable panels, but the fact that they're still in the game, that to
Yeah.
me was a game changer. And what surprised me was, oh my gosh, there it is going to be over 10,000 or
Yeah.
oh, why did they launch this so late? Why didn't they do it at CES? And I was like, wait, the whole point is to share with you that they're in the
Yeah.
game. But
Yeah.
that was all lost by several disappointments. Like, okay, well, I'm over it. Let's talk about 2025. Like, wait, didn't
Yeah.
last year you were telling me that Sony is not good enough anymore? And then of course
Yeah.
you got complaints that they're focused on LCD TV. So what I
See,
wanted to do was to give context with you
yes.
why I think they took what arguably is a good approach, and this is not defending Sony. It's an industry-wide issue that I'm very excited to address in this video.
Yeah. So for those of you that haven't really seen this format before, these are tech therapy. We actually do these in tandem with our live streams. The live streams give us the ability to talk with you guys, but it gives us an ability here to talk amongst ourselves and get you guys involved in the comments where we stay on a task. These are unscripted. But yesterday, we were both very excited. Obviously, we were both in Japan with a small group of media and creators. And what we saw there is something we wanted to share with you guys very badly. And obviously, we saw some disappointment. We could not share what we saw with the 2025 lineup. There's no way we'd be able to drop that until it's appropriate. So I expected the disappointment there, FOMO, when they saw that we weren't going to be able to say, hey, this is what's coming. But then I was still rather surprised that there was less excitement of what we were discussing. What the RGB mini LED, we'll call it the Bravia 10 for which I don't think they're going to call it that. But I was
Well,
really
it's
pretty.
better than calling it the prototype again, which is
Yeah, I
what we
like the
call the Bravia 9
I like
half the
I
year,
like
the prototype.
the prototype is more ominous. But I guess my thing is what disappointed me was not really disappointing me, but I was so excited to share what we saw. Not, what we ate food wise or who we hung out with. That's
Mhm.
really not important. But the end to end approach by Sony, from the production to the sound, we met creators, filmmakers, everyone, and showing why the whole cinema home thing even exists. The cameras and the TVs are really just the end part of it, something Sony wants to keep doing, showing us the innovation that they're continuing to innovate, not just with their processing, but having this display organically. from the ground up was what I was so happy to deliver. And even as we were delivering that, all I could see was, how much is it going to be? Mini LEDs are dead tech. I mean, I saw so much pushback from a brand that is so popular and has so
There
many
was the
fans.
lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, it was like, mini LEDs are a dead technology. But what I really didn't see was the open-mindedness of, oh my God, this is very exciting. And what it really illustrated to me, FOMO, was the the separation between the manufacturer and the audience, but also between us as creators and the audience in conveying what we saw. Being able to
So
convey it, as far as articulating it, people were just more concerned, motorcycle flying by, more concerned with price. Wow, no 2025. And that's all they wanted to hear. And we were really also, FOMO, trying to delineate the difference between Hisense's version at CES and Samsung's micro LED version at CES. We were so happy to hear that this was Sony's organic, this was theirs. And it seemed like the community really wasn't interested in hearing that.
and I think it starts with timing because remember at CES, no matter what we shared about whether it's Samsung's RGB micro LED, which we were both impressed, but it's essentially the same technology as Hisense RGB mini LED, which we were very impressed, which essentially is very similar to Sony's RGB LED, which also left us impressed. But notice the timing set a different level of excitement. And so I want to address, should Sony have launched this announcement at CES? And because we, meaning myself, you, and the viewers, our audience, we're in the echo chamber of TV enthusiasm. Even with the 900 odd viewers we had yesterday in our live stream, they're all really big, hardcore TV enthusiasts.
Yeah.
But if you take a step back, and I think this recommendation applies to everyone in the TV industry, LG, Samsung, Hisense, TCL, and of course, Sony took this advice to heart, which is CES the best place to show off your best TV technology, whether it's 2025, like LG, right? All they have is 2025 and they're going to kill it. Or Hisense, we got RGB mini LED coming up, or Samsung, we got RGB micro LED coming up. And this is a problem, right? And this is my metaphor to you guys. CES, first and foremost, is a consumer electronics show. That means anything electronics is fair game. But are TVs really the most exciting thing at the consumer electronics show? If you were at the Sony booth, I know the TVs were not there, but you know what were there? Multi-million-dollar production equipment that just oohed and awed everyone. You had this virtual stage with a Jeep installed on these pneumatic things where you guys, the driver in the car shifting up and down, you got the camera tracking. All of that was like what, about $1 million worth of equipment. Then you have the PlayStation next
With
generation
with the
game.
micro LED behind it, by the way.
Yeah, with a micro LED that you
was
cannot buy
wrapped around
anywhere,
it. You
that
cannot
no one
buy
could
anywhere.
afford, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the PlayStation 5 prototype room where the floor is shaking. I mean,
We
it
did
was
Last of Us. Yeah,
cool.
it
The
was like
Last of Us.
yeah, so it was basically
All
an
of
amusement
that
park.
was there.
Yeah.
There is no way a
Yeah.
TV should be there because it's like a toaster trying to compete with a human robot running around, which there were also human robots running around
Yeah.
in other places, right?
Well, a
So
bunch of
the consumer, it's
bunch of
like you're at a
Terminators.
New York Fashion Week and you're trying to sell a belt. And the whole time you're saying, but no one notices my belt. Well, of course not. Maybe you should have your own show for belts and purses.
Yeah, or
Because if
shoes.
you are a
Yeah.
guy who only designs belts, it's going to be lost in the entire Fashion Week. And
Yeah.
I think Sony TVs pulling out of CES, LG, and this is why I'm wearing the LG hat, they're getting it. They're like, wait, we can't get buried at the LG showroom.
Yeah.
I mean, they no longer have OLED displays anymore. I mean, that's
No.
2020, right?
Yeah.
They pulled out and had their own little suite. Well, forget CES. Why didn't you take that suite and put it at another event that's only TVs and maybe sound bars? Give it its own space. Same with Samsung, the RGB micro LED. You and I were excited, but you know what caused more excitement? The dancing dog. I mean, you got this
Samsung
robot
displays.
dog that's beating
Yeah.
people playing Revolution, Dance Revolution with this dog.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's crazy. Now that's impressive because you and I, when we come back, if our spouses and significant others ask you, "Hey, what was new at CES with TVs?"
I don't
You know what
know.
you and I will say? It's a little bit
No.
brighter.
Yeah,
It's a little
yeah,
bit brighter.
yeah,
How does that move the needle for anyone among TV enthusiasts? Hot damn, 4,000 nits. And she's like,
yeah.
I don't understand. What's a nit?
Well,
But what
yeah,
about, did you guys see the dancing dog? Do you see that Sony this and that? I'm like, no, I got an extra 1,000 nits out of my TV. You
yeah,
cannot get buried at CES. I think all TV makers need to get out of CES, put themselves in a true TV home theater space where it's about TVs. The star of the show is TVs and maybe soundbars for audio. That's it. Give yourself that space. And LG tried it offsite. Don't even be at CES. It's too much noise.
yeah.
All the press that's coming out is so exciting. And then you have TVs, which I hate to say, it's becoming more and more of a commodity. I mean, you guys, the audience, when's the $500 Sony going to come out that I could afford? So the more I talk about awesome TVs, the more you're like rolling your eyes. Well, my TV's good enough, which you're not wrong, by the way. My
Of course.
toaster is good enough. I'm not going to pay for
Yeah,
a,
it
I don't
makes it
know,
makes
a
toast, and it
Viking toaster. I mean, is it going to be any better?
yeah. But people do, and I think that's the funny thing about the enthusiast thing is people do spend 15 to $20,000 on a Viking refrigerator.
Toaster,
They do, and
toaster.
that or toaster or whatever it is. But and look, we always want to be careful when it comes to the economy, and obviously things are tough out there. They're always tough. We understand that, but what I saw was from myself, Sony's innovation, proving to us now, look, they went a step further. They had a separate event to showcase that they were still innovating. It wasn't like,
Mhm,
hey, take our word for it. It was like, hey, meet the guy behind the guy. So
mhm.
you want to talk about us really being fans? What I would wish I could convey to you guys is bring you in the rooms with these engineers. The demos were not, it's not marketing people, it's with the engineers, the people that built these displays that can actually let you know what XR Clear is, what the cognitive processor is really doing, what focal point analysis is, all the things that make the
Or
display look
that's
3D.
actually that's exactly what Sony did. And I told them, why do I not have this demo material?
Yeah,
The engineers that were tuning the, and we're not going to talk about what TVs we saw,
of
they were
course.
tuning these TVs. They had a demo where I'm like, clearly this separates your technology for everyone. Why am I not getting that demo? Why is it in
Yeah.
this basement, right?
So
And so
yeah, well, yeah,
I advise all TV makers, give me the demos that
yeah,
teaches me how to separate your TV from the
yeah,
competition. Because if
yeah.
it's up to me and you look for our own demos and we choose the wrong demo like Columbo, all TVs look the same. I mean, if
Yeah.
I'm out there
Well,
showing 1970s Brady Bunch, guess what? You're getting QM6K and you'll be happy for it.
Well, and more importantly, what Sony was showing was not really ours is brighter. It really was separating the detail that the processor itself brings out. And also the misconception of, say, quantum dot OLEDs from when they first got them, or hey, I'm taking WOLEDs from LG, from Samsung Display, and that thought of, well, just get the Samsung because Sony's slapping their name on it.
Yeah.
Having no idea that the quantum dot layer, that's all it is from
And
Samsung Display.
and you said Samsung. I want to revisit what Samsung did. And I think maybe Sony may have done this. I don't know because I should have asked. Samsung retained a professional color grader, the doctor of HDR himself, Florian, Dr.
Yeah,
Florian. He works with Samsung now, flying to exotic places, capturing this on his own
yeah,
camera,
yeah,
grading it on his TV, on his mastering monitor, making sure that HDR is really demonstrated on the Samsung S95F at CES. And I said to Florian, why am I not being sent this stuff when I review a
yeah,
Samsung?
yeah,
Had I had these videos, I would not be hunting down random, we
yeah,
would not be asking people to, hey, maybe if you have Alpha, Alpha was
yeah,
designed on a Sony grading monitor. How about getting an actual footage that was designed for QD OLED
yeah,
specifically
yeah. Well,
because
and
you
if
have a
yeah,
QD OLED?
well, because again, this is where we're seeing the separation between marketing, saying, okay, we have the graphs, or we have the still shots, or even have the videos. Thank God we actually have Jennifer Gala, who has content that pushes it so their TVs do separate themselves. But also, FOMO, the thing between media, influencing YouTubers, creators, it's also look the way the algorithm works. you see more creators in the videos than the displays themselves. So you're relying on them to tell you what they saw. There's something lost there. There's not
Mhm.
really enough hands on. And look, I pride myself in my videos as I'm barely in them, other than these long live streams or tech therapy. I want to showcase the TV 100% of the time because as a viewer, I want to see the TV, not the guy in front of it. That's just the way I film. It's just the way I do things. But if we could have conveyed what we saw from Sony, I think it would have made more excitement and it would have separated them more because the Hisense one was an RGB, it was just their demo material and it was beautiful. Samsung's was their own demo material. The chassis was the real story behind Samsung. What we saw from Sony in Japan was real content against real competitors. We saw shadow detail, we saw brightness, we saw depth, we saw the local dimming in action, off viewing angle, enough to say, wow, this is going against OLEDs in the room. And regardless, it wasn't in a bright room either, FOMO. It was in a dark
Mhm.
room. That's something I
And
wish I can convey.
I would have loved to package what Samsung did in the special Dr. Florian workshop
Yeah, yeah, with the actual, it
with
was
what
8K footage.
LG did at the workshop where I live streamed, right? That, not the
Yeah,
CES where they had no information and nothing for us, but what
yeah,
they did with the workshop with us about a week ago. And then you have Sony, what they did with us, do it in the US because you
yeah,
have your demo material, bring it to the US. And what well, TCL hasn't done it, or Hisense hasn't done it yet, but
yeah,
Hisense or TCL rather, stripped apart their LCD layer to show the back. Let's have it all in one place. And CES is not the place, by the way, because the people you have there, your press, your reviewers, your creators, guess what we want to see? The exciting stuff that actually moves the needle in technology. The
yeah.
Consumer Electronics Show is not the consumer TV home theater show.
No,
And even though when you say home theater, you got speakers, you got soundbar, you
yeah,
got 100, you got the Roku box, Roku stick. If you only want to focus on TVs, we need an event that's all about what you spent so much time tuning, the color accuracy, the brightness, and then talk to the engineers. Hey, when you tuned this, were you thinking hockey? No, no, I was thinking soccer. So the green looks
yeah,
this way, right?
yeah.
Whatever that may be. That's the stories we want to hear. And that should be at a TV dedicated event because you will be lost in the noise of more impressive technology. Again, I expect next year we're going to have dancing robots, dancing nannies, really
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
stuff. And then I'm going to try to push out, oh, this next TV is really awesome. They're going to ask me why. Well, it's brighter. And then, wait, for the last 3 years, it's been getting brighter. Don't you guys do anything else? No, we
Yeah,
just keep
yeah.
on getting brighter, right?
Well,
And
and
so
yeah,
at some
yeah.
point, it doesn't no longer belong at CES. It's not CES material. It's not impressive
Yeah.
for the rest of the CES bandwidth that's
Well,
there. The
and
media is
because
not
yeah.
interested.
No, and the media is too busy covering there's no TV media. They're busy
No,
covering everything. So you have
yeah.
them covering phones.
We're
It's
dead
about,
last. We,
yeah,
meaning the TV
the
enthusiasts, we're dead
TV, yeah.
last on that
It's a,
list.
we're there's a very small group of creators that are TV only. And a majority of them were even, there was very few of us even there. But the the breath of fresh air that I tried to convey yesterday, and there was so much pushback, was Sony is still innovating. It's not just that they've had a version of this many years ago, but the days that you remember them innovating, a lot of people say, I wish I had Sony of old. Well, that
Well,
group
then
still works there. They're still there
let's
innovating FOMO.
let's
They're still
address
like,
the elephant.
Fuller, we
Right,
met those guys, bro. And we met them
but
and it
but
was a pleasure to shake their hand.
we have to address the elephant in the room. LCD fairly is not innovation, right?
Yeah, of
So
course.
I completely agree that when you have LCD, that is the pig, and the lipstick is the RGB LED. So let's talk about why did they stick with LCD? I mean, they could have easily said, you know what, QD OLED is the future. Let's focus on making QD OLED better than Samsung. And now,
Yeah.
not having talked to the engineers, but I can tell you, based on what I've seen and my knowledge of the industry, this OLED, whether it's QD OLED or any OLED, you have a size limitation. The size to price ratio is impossibly high once you get above 77 inches. LCD is not. Given that the future is over 85 inches, not 85, we're talking
Starts at
likely
85. Yeah.
5 years from now, everybody wants a 100-inch TV. And I'm talking
Yep.
the US market. I understand other markets you can't even fit in, but even the smaller markets, and I spoke to some friends in the UK, John Archer actually showed me the
Yeah, it
story.
was great, Dan.
The
Shout out to John
UK,
Archer.
oh, shout out to you, John. He said he didn't expect 100-inch size TVs to take off in the UK because of the small rooms. He goes, now they're taking off because they don't see it as a place to watch TV. If you could fit it on your wall, you put it there. It's become an installation where when it's a TV, it's a TV. When it's not, we can show art, we could impress our friends. It becomes just something awesome that's big. And if your wall is big enough to fit a 100-inch TV, boom, you fit it because it ends up being part of the home as a
Yeah,
large fixture that's just graphically amazing,
yeah.
right? And
Well,
with that
well,
in
and Flo,
mind,
that,
if
that's
the
not. There's nothing new
UK
behind
is
that.
doing
Yeah,
that, the US is going to run their farther ahead, right?
yeah.
So if the
But
100
what's
inches is
funny
the
is
future, there's
our
no way OLED is possible.
no, and our favorite movies. I was reminded of like Total Recall. These favorite movies, it was
Mhm.
always about having an LCD as like playing nature in the background while you're eating breakfast with your family. So everybody's
That's
dream
it.
will always be everyone's dream will always be to have a theater at home, and TVs are there. But also, FOMO,
Right.
to call LCD dead tech, it's funny because the reference monitor is a dual cell LCD, and
Mhm.
it's the best looking thing on the planet. So I just find it interesting that we talked about also meeting them. It was so different than, hey, this is our version that we license from Hisense or whoever. This was theirs. They've been working on it for how many
Yes.
years, and they were
Yeah, it
so
is not
proud of it.
Hisense tech. This is
No,
100% Sony
and that's what.
homegrown tech.
But my confusion was nobody cared in the chat yesterday. Nobody cared. All they said
Well,
was,
I
"How much is it? I don't want it yet. Tell me about 2025," which is important. But the fact is, nobody cared about what I thought was the big aha moment was
mhm.
quality control, the mirror, which we'll talk about in a moment, which is super important. But the extra steps that Sony takes in regards to processing and innovation that separates them when you turn the lights off, nobody
Mhm.
cared. Even the enthusiasts, 900 people, our whole crew was in there and nobody cared. Oh, yeah, it's going to cost $10,000. They didn't care. And I was like, wait a minute,
Well,
if
yeah,
you're
and
with
and they
us,
wanted to they wanted to care about the 2025 model for sure. And well, but you brought up something
or
when you said
models,
Total
yeah.
Recall. When you said Total Recall, the LCD in the back, right, playing guard and everything. Let's have some context. At what point do we say a technology is there? So, okay, fine. LCD is old technology. You want micro LED. Okay, let's fast forward 10 years, right? The
It's been
prediction
out
is 10
forever,
years from
it's
now,
been out forever, by the
right?
way.
But let's say the micro LED is there.
Yeah.
10 years after that, is that now lipstick on a pig? I mean, at
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
some point, you have to say, actually, this technology is pretty good. And I don't know
Yeah.
how many times I've said this in the last 2 years. Guys, on angle, you're going to have a hard time distinguishing between OLED and LCD. Granted, off angle, LCD starts to suffer. And so we still
Yeah.
had that discussion. This year, it's getting better. As long as they continue to improve LCD, at some point, even old tech is going to be good enough. And I
Yeah.
understand you guys want quote unquote the latest and the greatest, but if an LCD technology really looks the same as the best tech, but far cheaper, give me that all day long. Because already you're complaining about this advanced tech that's so expensive. The fact that it's
Yeah.
LCD means it'll trickle down to you sooner rather than later. If it was micro LED, if Sony says, "Hey guys, we got the micro LED, it's coming," well, now it's 50,000. If you thought that 15,000, and I don't have any insight on pricing, but I'm predicting, like, let's say the 85-inch RGB LED is between 10,000 and 15,000.
Yeah.
That's expensive, but I see that going under 10. I don't see 40,000 go under 10 anytime soon. That's going to take
No,
a while to go under 10.
but
So
FOMO,
that's just something to keep in mind.
the 75-inch Z9D was 9 grand. I mean, I've spent more than that
And
on
in
TVs.
yesterday's dollars, today
Yesterday,
that's 15 grand,
yeah,
right?
yesterday's dollars. And look again, keeping economics in mind and not belittling that. But I'm gonna give one of our crew some love without naming him. So he said when he grew up on his wall, he had posters of a Ferrari, not a Corolla. So there's still that look to innovation. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to see that. Even if you can't afford that specific model, that's going to trickle down. Where micro LED
Mhm.
is right now available at $200,000, and we know that. But even Samsung's last 8K TV was nearly 9 grand at 85 inches.
You know, you bring a good point right there. Is so what Sony did was put out something that is aspirational, right? Next year, expensive.
Yeah.
LG did not do that at all.
They're a
So
little too much in the moment. Yeah.
let's take the other brand. Would you guys prefer that? Now, I don't have the right answer, but each one has their own marketing approach. Clearly, LG was working on this four stack for years,
Yeah.
not a mention. Hid it in the back.
They're still hiding it. Still hiding it. They
Yeah,
still won't tell
well,
you
who
what
knows
it
what's
is.
coming out, right? Who knows what's coming out?
Yeah.
But you don't know what's coming. Maybe in 26 is a completely different stack. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And the question is that better? Would you rather not know and just focus on the now, which is what LG is doing, or what Samsung, Hisense, TCL, and Sony, they all give you a little taste of what's coming, right? Samsung with our RGB micro LED,
Yeah.
TCL with RGB mini LED, kind of right there on the side, not really talking, but it's there for you to see, and it's coming. Hisense slamming home, it's coming. End of the year, but it's 116-inch, so 85-inch next year as well. And then Sony coming out right saying, hey, we're working on it. That's coming next year. So you have other brands,
Yeah.
and then you have LG who develops these OLEDs. So they are a supplier. They know what's coming,
Yeah.
not sharing it at all. What do you prefer, Brian? Which approach do you like? This one or the others?
So it's very funny, FOMO, that you just said that. We'll touch on what you're asking me in a second. But what's funny about LG, for instance, is having micro lens array 2 or 3 years before they released it. And then they were kind of beaten by QD OLED. They had to throw out micro LA, quick, get it out there, where they could have had the head start for years. With Hisense, yes, people in our videos were saying, "Wow, it's 116. That's disappointing. Where's the rest of the lineup?" And then it was a micro LED wall at 130 inches that people like, okay, cool. There was more pushback from Sony fans, and I think what it is them showing nothing yet was really, it's like almost creating the hype too much, and then I smacked them with something that's not coming out. So I think that confused people and frustrated them. They're like, come on, everyone else has at least put their cards out a little bit, and Sony is still keeping a secret. So I
Okay,
think that's what
so
frustrated them.
actually, when you brought up LG keeping that MLA in their pocket, for a few years before it actually came out, oh wow, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Maybe last year when Sony released the Bravia 9, and then people said, that's it. That may have been the time to do RGB LED. I don't know. Because if you said, look, RGB LED is coming, this is what we're doing, all these great things. First, it takes the legs out of Hisense and Samsung. If you know, and you probably did, you had your spies, everyone has spies. If you knew that they're going to launch this at CES, and you had this sitting since 2004, you're just waiting for the right time, I'm wondering if it wouldn't have been better to have an Sony RGB LED event, giving it your own name in November. I mean, the Bravia 9's already been released, and people are saying, oh, Sony's behind, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, of course.
That would have given you a chance to sell the Bravia 9, which you did. It doesn't cannibalize anything because it's so awesome. And you say, hey, guess what? In 2 years, oh, wait till you see this. Or the minute it's January 1st, you announce it, or, have us go to Tokyo in November, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Have us do it over the Christmas break, because you're not doing CES anyway. You completely take the legs out of CES. Then when you're there, you'll be like, RGB micro LED? FOMO, is that Sony LED?
Yeah.
I don't know. Basically, it takes the legs out of everyone. So looking back, and now I know hindsight's 2020. I don't know if that was even a possibility, but always the first to create the hype owns the hype. Hisense owned that hype. And on our stream, I think I saw at least 2 comments where Sony repackaged Hisense because they missed the first part, right? Because they went straight to the stream. And I spent the rest of the video trying to remind them, no, this is Sony's homegrown. That's why I had it, because I knew people would assume it's Hisense's product, and it's not Sony's fault. It's actually Hisense being smart, jumping out before anyone else, and now suddenly it's a Hisense technology. Sony could have owned that space for the next 2 years. And now we're going to spend the next 2 years reminding people, no, Sony, they developed it themselves.
And it's funny you say, because I'm definitely putting homegrown in the thumbnail, because that was my biggest takeaway, FOMO. But what's funny is the more we discuss it, the more you become a Sony apologist. Until I'm in an LG video, then I'm an LG apologist. Look, we covered them all equally. But what Sony did differently, other than just an amazing trip, was they're the only manufacturer to really lift the veil. It's not a market. I mean, there's marketing people, but I'm not dealing with a marketing firm, and then I don't know anybody. You're meeting people each time, from the Japanese team to the North American team. But the thing that I wanted to talk about a lot too, FOMO, was the craftsmanship of both areas. That it's about
Mhm.
a better product. It's about them. That's what you're paying for. You're paying a premium, but that premium still is not higher than Samsung or really LG. It's really when they release their TVs, they do come off as being more expensive because they're 3 months later, right? We're right now. We're going to have LG released in a few weeks or whatever it is. By the time they'll be out before Sony even announces their lineup. So of course the perception is it's going to be more expensive. The A95L, A95K, they released in October. So of course they're
Yep.
not going to release at the current prices of the year before. So I think that hurts them. But the perception that they're this Lamborghini, Bentley, pricey thing isn't accurate. Now they're more
Actually,
expensive than TCL and Hisense,
no, they're
but
not. Wait, Brian, did you see the? And that's what I was
so,
going to say.
so
TCL
hold
is
on.
more expensive now
So
because, to
funny,
your point,
the
when
bait and
you
switch.
release
Yeah.
craftsmanship, it goes up
Yes.
in price, even
So
if you're TCL.
So for context, a few years ago, Hisense released the UX, which was this new flagship. And Hisense has been doing that the
Yep.
last couple of years, UX 110. They released that TV. I put it up against the X95, and it did X95K at the time. It did very well. The first thing people said is, I'm not paying $5,000 for that. Are you out of your mind? It's a Hisense. So if you don't
Yep.
think Hisense and TCL, as they release more enthusiast models, aren't going to smack you in the face with 11, 12,000. You think the U16 or the 16 UX is going to be $10,000?
25 grand. That's my
At
prediction.
least, at least. But so it's funny that Sony gets hit with that, but I never saw it as much as I did in our comments of that video. No matter how much
Mhm.
I said homegrown, you guys want that enthusiast model. The more I say that, the more I make it sound like, oh, I'm defending them. I'm telling you the fact of what I witnessed. That's what I'm trying to convey. The craftsmanship. When I meet the engineers, the father, what's the name? The father of the Trinitron. Meeting these guys and girls that have been doing this for many years, those of us, especially in the US, that wish manufacturers had the same employees for 30 years, 20 years. The average person at Sony's 10 years in North America and Japan. So they have that lineage. The processing is, guys that have been there for many, Pablo, the engineers, Hugo, all these guys we've known, it comes out in the product. And the processing is not just a word slapped on it. They showed us that. And FOMO, let's touch on the quality control. With the Sony Master Series, we believe they were binned differently. They pick one,
Yep.
they throw the other one away. The A90J, why do they have better screen uniformity? Why is there less banding on WOLEDs from Sony opposed to LG? And DSC is less on Sony TVs. They've been doing this for many years. But talking about this new technology, from what they showed us with that camera, tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are with the mirror technology, what they've been doing for
So,
quite a while.
right. And we explained what the Mura was in my video. So look at the
Yeah. Oh,
timestamp, MURA. I don't want to go
yep.
over that entire thing, but essentially they use software to compensate for dirty screen effect. So if your screen has spotchy black, so they get the raw panel from wherever they get it,
Yep.
CSOT, BOE, it doesn't matter. They get it, they go, oh my gosh, you got all these vertical lines, right? Banded.
The things you guys hate that are on
Right.
the cheaper TVs.
Well, what they did is, oh, you know what? We'll just lower or increase the brightness here, change the color there. Suddenly it's gone. Like you see LG TVs. Why is there a green gray tint? Sony sees it.
On one
They
side. Yep.
offset. It's no longer green. Oh, there's a lot of pink tint here. Sony's going to do this, and there's less pink. They're using, I mean, to the degree they can. I mean, oftentimes
Yeah,
it's
with it,
just
yeah,
too
can't.
far gone,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But it was pretty impressive. But it's something they've been doing for years now with this special camera. It captures it, they send it through an algorithm, software compensates, and then they double check it. Okay, it's even. Now we can start putting on the processing layer, right? This is their base correction in firmware. And that's something that I didn't appreciate. Now, it costs money to do this. Obviously, it's cheaper than me telling them, I just throw away these, because, and the response is, you understand 100% of these panels are bad. The way
Yeah.
you're approaching it, FOMO, we throw away everything.
Yeah.
So we can't do that.
Well,
They're all bad. So
yeah.
accepting that they're all bad to different degrees, we can make them all good to different degrees, compensate for it, and at least more often than not, it looks better.
Yeah.
And the question is, why did they just release it now? Most likely someone figured out what they were doing and now they're doing it. So, okay, you know what? Everyone
And,
has it now.
and
We
that's
expect other TV
yeah.
makers to be doing this.
And that's I think the problem, FOMO, because one of the biggest wow moments of the entire trip was not only the RGB mini LED, which was showing us real content. And we said, yeah, off angle. No, no, not now. Not only do you have the brightness, not only do you now have blooming that is completely controlled, you're seeing the blooming as a color. So instead of a white hue, you might see a red hue, which goes with the image. So it actually matches the content. If it's a bright red light, it's going to have a little bit of a redness around it. But the shadow detail was better than the OLED it was competing with. The
Mhm.
brightness was better than the mini LED it was competing with. So that was amazing. So you heard like the wow. Then on the other side with the mirror, when you saw that, that was the biggest wow. But to show you how much they go in depth, the camera that does this process is theirs.
Yeah.
So here, I'm not just sourcing, hey, I bought an LED company or I bought a camera company. Oh, we built a camera to do this extra layer of screen uniformity that everyone complains about. So when someone buys a cheap TV at 100 inches, everyone goes, well, how's the screen uniformity? Probably not good. And it's huge. So you have a company with their lowest TVs doing this. And they have the same processor on some of their lower TVs. So from top to bottom, it's that extra quality. It is going to cost money to use that camera, which they built from the ground up.
Yep. They're
And
going to have
that's
to amortize the cost of research and development on that
yes,
sensor.
offer a screen uniformity for a company that doesn't need to make TVs anymore. And that's why I think the CES thing, to wrap it around FOMO, the gear we saw at CES, not just the virtual rides that we were part of, The Last of Us and all these different things, the Jeep, the screen behind it, the camera, filming it. These things are millions of dollars.
Mhm.
TVs are a drop in the bucket. They do still need to make money, but Sony's main priority is not to make money, and it's also not market share. The other manufacturers aren't lifting the veil. They're not showing us anything, but they want market share and they want to make more money. Sony's not doing that, but getting penalized and beaten up for the innovation and for being slightly more expensive than the cheapest brands. So I was hoping this trip we could convey that, but how is anyone going to do that in a short video? No one's going to watch a video that says,
Mhm.
hey, they have great quality control. We're doing that because we have a discussion format. These videos are meant to be an hour long. Our live streams
Mhm.
can't really do that because they're getting interrupted with the comments. So, this is the ability to say, guys, if you like craftsmanship, if you like to know that the employees that built that Trinitron, the ones that built the TVs that you love, those people are still there. They're not getting the brain drain of talent like a lot of other manufacturers. That's what you're
Well,
paying
this,
for.
and I want this invitation to extend to all the TV brands. I saw the engineer at LG who, was one of the product guys
Yep.
at OLED Korea, and he was so excited to talk to me because he felt like we get it
Yeah.
from what they do, not the marketing side. The marketing has their own objectives,
You can't
but the
sell it.
engineering,
Yeah.
right? The engineers like you get what we're trying to do, and you understand the compromises we make. It's an
Absolutely.
open invitation to every brand, LG, Hisense, Samsung, TCL. Let's talk to the design objectives on that. I know what your marketing objectives are, and I see it in your marketing write-ups, right?
Yeah.
Partially written by AI. I know, I can tell. But the engineering guys, they were told this is what we need to do for these TVs, and they did it.
Yeah.
And they want to explain more why, because we know no TV is perfect. It's always built to a budget. What were the compromises you made and why? For example, LG, I do want to ask them, okay, I understand you cut down BFI. Why is that?
Yeah.
Maybe it was too dim and people weren't using it. I get it, but now that it's brighter, is there a chance it'll come back? These are the stuff they want to share. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
We can't do it because it'll cost this much, and if we do this, we can't do this. And this is a
That's the answer,
discussion.
though. That's the answer.
That's the answer. Like, if we
Yeah.
can't do this, we can't do this. Well, what is this you chose over this? Goes, well,
Yeah.
we did our research and customers prefer more AI for this because they don't understand the settings. That I completely get. I hate settings. I mean, I'm a reviewer, I get it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I can guarantee you, my mom, my kids, they don't want to ever click the settings button. The minute they click it, they're like, I gotta go on the internet and find out what the
Yeah.
heck all of this means.
Yeah.
Because one TV calls it brightness, another TV calls it peak brightness, another one calls
Yeah.
it luminance. Like, and what's black level? What's shadow detail? They're going to
Yeah.
spend 2 hours and still not get it. And they're not going to binge for 5 days to get one TV. And so LG is focused on, look, just tell the TV, I want it brighter. And then the TV will do an assessment of your room and boom. You know what? The skin tones, it doesn't feel natural, right? AI will understand what that means and they will put it in filmmaker mode for you. That's what people want, an
Yeah.
easier TV to use, but that costs money. So
It
guess what?
does.
BFI, out the door. Not that they can't do it, but
Yeah.
there's a
But
limit to what they can do. And but I want to hear it
yeah.
from them.
And what are the diminishing returns of that? I mean, Sony
Yeah.
really, with their ambient mode from a few years ago, for most manufacturers, that's an eco mode or that's a eye strain mode. Sony's literally calibrating the TV on the fly. And one of the
Hmm.
biggest treats for me, we can share this, is the room. First of all, every time we met the engineering teams, what was very cool is every room that we were in, they brought us back in to take pictures with everybody. I wish we had those pictures. They were very
Oh my
excited
God.
to meet
We
us.
can't even share those pictures.
Yeah.
They would take your camera and smash it and take the
Yeah,
film
so
out.
they took pictures with us, amazing pictures that, but it showed you their exuberance and how excited they were, and a lot of them were nervous, but my favorite room was seeing the room where they actually do the TV tuning with all the different
Hmm.
degrees of lighting, where the presets
Hmm.
are actually created, and even TVs that are the same technology, you see what Sony does differently. So when you say, "Hey, let's just use the, S95D from a year ago or the A95L," when you say, "Well, just get the cheaper one." Well, the TVs are not the same at all. They have the same base screen, not the plastic screen or the glass. I'm talking about the same film. That is it. Everything else is from the specific manufacturer. And the time they spend tuning that TV, which is why Sony's the best at set it and forget it. Any preset you want, even their most vivid preset, is
Hmm.
usable.
Hmm.
It's not as noisy. There's a reason why they don't let the brightness go higher. It's not really for the health of the panel. They do want to retain it. Finding out from end to end FOMO that the A95L was nearly sold out because the actual filmmakers keep them on set next to the reference monitor so they can see what the end user sees on a Netflix with Dolby Vision or HDR. So they showed us that, and but how do we convey that? That's the problem with these events, FOMO. You're saying a TV event is basically saying, we're the TV guys, these are the TV makers, here's the engineers, give them a place where the engineers can talk.
Hmm.
Well, when you get into bringing us all there, something's always going to be lost in a translation. Nobody from our crew are doing 50 minutes of, hey, we saw this, right? So it's all that is trying to get packed in, and there's a disconnect between us and the viewer. And that's why I want to do this video on top of our 2 hour live stream, is try to put you there with us. The wow moments were not, wow, that's a really tall building. Wow, Japan is really beautiful. It was meeting those, it was seeing how the sausages are made. That's something I wish you guys, and to tell you, if you're worried about Sony making money, the cost of that trip, they're not going to make back end TV sales. They're trying to get that story out from end to end. To have the filmmakers and the sound designers forward, that was so eye opening. Not like, hey, this
Hmm.
guy did this show in this movie. It was, these are the Sony products we use to get there. Meaning they don't need to sell TVs. They make more money selling the cameras, make more money selling reference monitors. So I'm grateful they actually still sell TVs. But
Yep.
that's gonna get less and less each year if they're gonna keep getting beat up about the Sony tax conversation.
And to be fair to the consumer, if you can't afford a Sony, that's fine.
Yeah,
It's and this applies to all brands. Samsung has a $6,000 TV. It's an 8K TV. TCL now has four, five, $6,000 TV. You don't have to buy those. And same with Sony. They have these aspirational, they're pricey TVs. But
yeah,
then that's why TCL and Hisense is swallowing the market below $1,000. Sony understands that the expense that they have, they cannot effectively sell a TV under $1,000. It is what it is. And I'm never going to criticize Sony for not selling a cheap TV. But if you're selling an expensive TV, it better be rock solid. And that's
yeah,
why we're hard on the flagships. Mid tier, I'm harder on TCL and Hisense because I know what they're capable of. But
yeah,
the reality is, Samsung, Sony, and LG, below 1,000, they have a hard time. LG comes close with the B5, B4. If they can get that to under 1,000, that's likely my number one recommendation for a
yeah,
65-inch TV. If we can get that
yeah,
B5 under 1,000,
yeah.
but it's 1200, and that's like, now you're hitting at a 75, 85 inch QM6K, QM7K. Now it's size versus absolute. I mean, it's
Yeah.
always hard as you go up in price, and then you have the size differential that benefits the less expensive budget TVs. But in the TCL, they said, look, if you want me to flex, I'll flex. It's going to cost you 10 grand. And then
Yeah,
people are like,
see
wait,
that.
what? What?
Yeah,
What?
see,
What?
yeah. What happened? I thought it was, well, that's why the Bravia 9, when it was called the prototype, it was, the hype was better for that than it is for this RGB mini LED. And people thought if
Hmm.
that's coming this year, it's going to be 12 grand. Well, when the 85-inch Bravia 9 launched, it's cheaper than what the G5 costs right now, or will be launching at. And everyone's like, oh, that's too expensive. And I understand the 65 is expensive, but what Sony does differently than anybody else is that top of the line processor was in the X90L. Everyone else
Yeah.
has, like, that B4 has the Alpha 8, C4 Alpha 9. Then you get to the Alpha 11, and you also, the neural processor that's in the QN900D is on that one TV. So there's
Hmm.
value that's sprinkled there. The build quality, the chassis, these things are all quality of life things that we talked about, but more importantly, FOMO, reliability. And we said this
Yeah.
with, shout out to Derek and Larry from Sony, having a dedicated customer service YouTube channel or they'll talk to the consumer twice a week. That kind of stuff. Now that's money they're spending, production value they're spending. So these are the things that nobody cares about until something goes wrong.
Well, the Sony fans are Sony fans for a reason. And we're not here to win over non-Sony fans, but rather give some context as to there
High
is a good
cost.
reason to be
Yeah, of
a fan of any of these brands, right?
course.
LG, right? They're very good at developing their gaming features. It's very well thought out. They actually have gamers developing it. They have to because it's very well thought out. Same with Samsung. And then TCL and Hisense knows what corners to cut to balance image quality with price. And that's such a hard balance. But if
Yeah.
you tell them, hey, do what you can to make the best TV, it ends up being the same price as a Sony. And that's something that
If
I
not more.
love
Yeah.
because yeah, right. The QM9K, look at the price leaks. They're not going to be cheap. And even the QM7K, the 115 inch is like $20,000. Like, wait, what? This is a QM7K. You're pricing at the same price as last year's QM8K. That's
Yeah.
better. And it's so there is no free lunch, regardless of who you are. The art is in what do you take away, right? The whole Jenga, pull as many things out as you can.
Works
Hopefully, it
glasses.
still
Yeah.
stands. And as long as it still stands, ship it and sell it. And TCL and Hisense have been a master at making the right cuts. Whereas I'm going to use Samsung as an example. They are even more overpriced than Sony. As much as
Yeah.
you guys complain about Sony, I would never recommend a Q80C, Q70C for the price that they were selling at, or the Q80D.
Yeah.
I feel
It's
that price is too high. Now, Q85D, okay, there's some value there, but just below the Neo QLED, way too overpriced. Give me a TCL all day long over any of the crystals.
so,
Anything between the crystal and that is just too high. I don't get it.
so,
The QLED
so
is just way too
So
expensive.
stay right there with Samsung, because when we showed, and I think you're absolutely right with CES and Sony releasing this, Sony putting this out when people are just starving for the 2025 information, I think was probably what annoyed people,
Oh
because
yeah.
no one cared that we showed
No,
that
Brian,
sexy.
wait. You were annoyed.
I mean, but nobody
You and I were
cared.
like, wait, what? I
Yeah,
want to talk about the 2025. Let's
yeah,
do
yeah.
that first. And
So I
no,
look at
no,
the
no, we're gonna
I
do
look
it
at
this
the
first.
embargo. I'm like, is this first? So we'll talk about that in a second. But the funny thing is having the Samsung there. It was the chassis, the micro LED, which we know is not micro LED, the RGB that they had. People speculated on price. Now that TV may be available this year. It might be 8K, but nobody really had the same vitriol that we saw from Sony chat. They were more
Mhm.
like it's kind of, people understand, it's a Samsung, it'll be expensive, but even they don't get hit with the same, like, Sony's the one you're in love with. That, how dare you cost this much? Well, you're like, wait a minute, I'm putting in more engineering than these guys are. That's Samsung is that's not their panel, from what I understand. I mean, we don't know 100%,
Right.
but
No,
I'm
nothing
guessing.
is their panel other
You
than
know,
QD OLED. Samsung Display only makes QD OLED.
so yeah, so
That's
we
it.
know that that's probably we saw ULED in the specs, but this is theirs. And the coolest thing I saw, I wish I had taken a picture of it, was seeing the we saw two or three different RGBs, because they had one that was just the backlight. Um, if you want to hear all about the technology, you can watch almost a video that we did the other day, but the backlight being color, but seeing all the wires coming out of the back of it, that Frankenstein's monster was, if you're a fan of technology, was a dream. I mean, there was literally 100 something cables sticking out of the back of those TVs, but they weren't showing me Sony demos. They were showing me movies. They were showing me not just the alpha, they were showing me the detail, they were showing me the size, the beauty, what the backlight is really doing. We saw the Bravia 9 wrap around and its backlight. Seeing this with color was like, oh my God, I can see, where we're going. OLED killer, killing, using that to death. You're seeing you'll have this in size. That to me is amazing. And to your point, at
Yeah.
CES, that would have gotten completely washed away
Uh-huh.
from the Samsung one, the Hisense one, and now they have their own event. And look, at even Hisense is doing a little bit of what Sony is doing. Their event for their U8 and U7 is in a few weeks in New York, completely
Mhm.
separate. Nobody's even seeing those. Just with them,
Mhm.
they're coming. With
Mhm.
Sony, you just don't know what they're releasing, which is a bit of mystique, FOMO. But do you think, as we wrap up at 50 minutes, geez, does Sony change that? Do you think that they should release the lineup, or do you think that this hurts the lineup for 2025? Do you think this announcement makes
Not
the
at all.
lineup compromised? I don't either. I don't either
Well,
because they're
if
saying it's
okay,
off into the future.
if it's not only if it's off into the future, but the pricing is a whole different tier. People
Yeah,
shopping for, I don't know, a minivan, an SUV, anything under 100,000. They don't care that Sony's releasing a $200,000 car
you would
a
think
year
so,
from now.
but
Right?
that's
You
you
would
would
think
think
so,
so.
right? This
I would,
RGB LED, whether okay, let's say they release it tomorrow. How many of you are rushing over to get it, right? None of you.
well,
I'm
apparently
not.
FOMO, everybody in the chat apparently wanted it, but they want it for a
Now,
grand. They want it for. I was seeing comments. They want 100+ inches for $2,000, and I'm like, you can get that
and hey, Hisense had one,
to
right?
Costco, and you can get that with some milk and some tires and some sweatpants. You can do that, but you can't expect that to be cutting edge. Those are direct lit LEDs, half
Right.
of them. So it's funny,
I
you
think,
want the
yeah, no,
innovation, but you don't want to
y-
pay for it.
you have to separate the events. They did it
Yeah,
correct. The question was the timing of this RGB LED. When should it have been done? And looking back, not during CES, not after CES,
yeah,
before CES. Forget that CES is a thing. It does not help TV makers. I'm going to have to emphasize this now.
no,
Beginning this year, seeing what CES is releasing as a consumer electronics show, they are so far beyond what TVs bring to the table. If all TVs can do is say, "Oh, we have better AI for, controlling the settings,"
yeah.
that doesn't move the needle for the consumer. They're like, "Okay, whatever. What's here?" You got the amazing flying robots, dancing robots. You have all the special effects stuff that's happening. You have video games that are virtual. You put it on and you're immersed like Ready
Yeah.
Player One. All of that moves the needle for the consumer to spend thousands and thousands.
Well,
With
almost
a
stay there.
TV, they're like, huh?
So, folks, stay there for a second because, for context, this late in the video, though, for those of you that have seen CES footage from us, the TVs, those are typically behind closed door events. Those aren't part of the CES booths from the manufacturer. So that's the important context, FOMO, is that LG, Samsung, especially, it's washing machines, it's quality of life, it's robots, it's blinds,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
things that aren't. So I think when people are confused, if you went to CES yourselves and you weren't invited to these extra events, even Samsung's event that had the RGB mini LED wasn't at their. I don't know if it was at their main booth. We didn't even go in. The last couple of years, QD wasn't even there. LG had no TVs other than the front thing. So for context, FOMO, CES really is about those other things that they make money off. Wash machines,
Yes.
cameras. So the TV, as you're saying, a TV event that they see us film, like LG did it in a hotel room,
I,
which is
I would
actually
rather
more.
they have skipped seeing what we saw at the workshop.
Yeah,
I didn't need them at CES. The workshop was way
yeah,
better for our viewers. They got me to
yeah,
see comparisons, they got the
yeah.
stream. All they got was disappointment from not just me and you at CES in terms of you have no information. It's a bright TV in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Literally, that looks like any other TV I've seen in the last 4 years. It
So FOMO,
looks in a vacuum, they all look great. I can't say it's better or worse.
yeah,
And you're not allowed to pull out a meter at CES, right?
of
And
course.
that's not what CES is for. It's to promote excitement. I think the TV space needs to pull out of CES. I'm telling you right now, it
Yeah.
does not belong in CES.
Well, and FOMO, but even for the workshop, even if you had, and look, we've been at several of these workshops before. You know, you have us, you have the media, they're writing their stories. Maybe they take a couple pictures. They all have value. Again, it was amazing to meet John Archer, Rasmus, meet all these guys that I've been reading for years. But for the most content creators, 5 minute video, 9 minute video, you still can't convey what we see. If you didn't bring your own content, I didn't bring my own content. The demo material is, and even though people say you're just showing demo material, I'm showing demo material for 10,000 nits. But the typical content creator is there to say, "Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? I was at LG." You're still not getting that to the consumer. They're still not able to have that touch and feel and see experience that they need to have. Is to let them have hands-on time because Best Buy doesn't have listening rooms anymore. The demo material you see at a Best Buy, and half the Best Buys have nothing in them, depending on where your Best Buy is located. So I think there's
Yeah.
this big gap where their message, all the manufacturers, and what you see is reliant on us. But we can't do every video can't be an hour. These are on purpose. These aren't meant to get a lot of views. They're meant to share this, but no one else is going to do these videos to talk about, hey, we saw the craftsmanship. It's just, you can't, it's just the way YouTube is. You're not going to get any views doing that. So why bother doing it? We love this. We're
Yep.
passionate about it. But how can you bridge that gap? And I think that's what I saw yesterday was a huge gap between manufacturer, creator, and audience. The problem is the audience was almost 1,000 enthusiasts that were watching that.
And this is not for the $500 TV. The $500 TV is a commodity TV. You
True.
move it fast and hard, and it's going to break in 3 years, and they're going to
Yeah.
replace it.
Put it in the garage. Give it back.
If
You're
you're
on.
going to invest, meaning the manufacturers, if your manufacturers are going to invest in a flagship experience, and TCL has two flagships this year, the QM8K, the QM9K, and the XC11K. The QM8K is kind of like that borderline flagship that's not cheap, but the
Yeah.
QM9K is genuine Bravia 9 pricing. The X11K is genuine Bravia 9 pricing,
More.
going against an
Yeah.
8K flagship from Samsung.
Yeah.
And bringing Samsung in, right? You got your flagship TVs. Because you're focused on a flagship, give the consumers a flagship engagement, whether it's through creators, whether it's through a separate event, but it's got to happen. Like Cedia, great, custom installers only. Public doesn't get to see anything. It's
Yeah.
customs installers talking to each other, and then you got all the home theater enthusiasts. But it's there's not enough of that engagement because you're showing off a completely different approach to selling those products to distributors and retailers.
Yeah.
I get it. There really is no place for the consumers, and I know what that's why they're at the electronics show. But you're getting buried. You guys are getting buried by real awesome, amazing products that are not like toasters and appliances
Yeah.
because that is where you show it off at CES. So I'm going to tell all you TV makers, consider pulling out of CES and just saving money and creating your own event when the noise dies down. It doesn't have to be the next
No.
day. It could be the
And
next week, right? It's still early or before CES. I don't know.
well, and that's the point about CES FOMO is that it's a little teaser, but even Samsung wouldn't share part numbers. Right? So then you
No.
get to the workshops, then you have embargoes, and you have all these things. Everyone is waiting, and then there's this rush for us to make videos and create. But again, even if you do have separate events, you have a bunch of creators to it. You can't dictate what they film and what they're going to show. So they'll eat the Panera bread, and like, all right, see you later. They'll do whatever they're going to do, but the product is still somewhere in the back. Someone says, "Dude, why are
Whoa,
your
whoa,
videos
whoa.
so long?" Well, I want the TV to. I want you to see it the way I saw it. I spend 5 hours with it. I want you'll get at least 20 minutes of the TV doing its thing. But the consumers can't say, "Well, I'll go into Best Buy and see that and see a quick demo loop."
Yeah.
FOMO, we'll let this go as we're at almost 60 minutes. The plan was 20 minutes, but I think it's an amazing technology. We're very excited about it. But what I'm more excited about is that Sony is now taking the initiative, or they're showing their innovation, I should say, that's still alive and well. That entire team, real quick, FOMO, when you talk about your favorite video game, someone will say, "Oh, I love that game. I wish they still made it." That entire team is gone. It could be Halo, it could be the
Mhm.
original team that made this game. So when you see a new team make that game, they'll always say, "I don't know why does it feel different." Well, the soul is gone. Sony's entire team, that group, that talent is there. The next group below it, because we met the next group, they can't wait to learn from the group above them. It's alive and well in
It's
the North America
it's a
side and in the Japanese.
yeah. It's a
Yeah,
generational mentorship. The
yeah,
mentorship is passed down from the Trinitron generation to the Plasma
they're still
generation
there. Yeah,
to this RGB LED generation, right? It's a continuity. They don't leave. They love being in this business that they're in, the space that they're in.
yeah.
They just don't bother me. I just want to focus on TVs. I just
And
want
that's
to focus on
and
processing
that
chips,
and that's like
image
us,
processors.
which is
That's
like
it.
us, which again is us. So talking to them, I would have much rather just hung out and pick their brain. The father of the Trinitron. We talked about what was
Osaka-san?
Osaka-san, right?
Osaka-san, yep.
Hanging out with Osaka-san, and then knowing that, oh,
Or
I remember
Oka-san.
that.
No, Oka-san.
Oka-san,
Oka-san.
Oka-san. He's like, I built
Oka-san.
that. I built that one. And then you guys see those TVs. You guys
Yeah.
see that. I mean, to me, that is incredible and something I again want to convey to you guys. That's what you're paying for. They're not
Mhm.
leaving versus, hey, who's the vice president? I don't know. That guy's gone. She's gone. They're all gone. They stay there for a reason, not just on the Japan side, but also in the North American teams. They're all
Mhm.
still there. Again, 7 years, 10 years being the
I
minimum.
think it's the culture. I think Panasonic does something similar as well.
Yep.
Can't wait to see what is lying in Panasonic's bread box this year.
Yeah. But Sony, again, being Panasonic used to be more end to end with their own studio.
Yeah,
Sony is the
right.
only one end to end where they have and products they sell to everyone all through the market all the way down. All right, FOMO, we talked it to death, but I think this was a great tech therapy for all of us. Those of you in the comments, look, Sony and all the manufacturers read the comments of these videos. We'll also link the description in the description to FOMO's last video, which we did yesterday. We'll put in the comments as civilized as you can what you think about Sony's plans, how they are not at CES, should they do their own TV event, and what is coming in the future. I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. That is Stop the FOMO. Take care, guys.
When you say civilized comments, I'm imagining people ripping off their shirts and typing.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
yeah,
being
that's so
alpha.
uncivilized. All right, bye,
All right.
guys.
Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. There can be only one.